Hello, BookTube. I have a kind of a Wednesday reads for you here. A bunch of books that are occupying me or on my immediate launch pad. And although it's Nonfiction November, that's a BookTube event created by Olive at a Book Olive, in which we're all encouraged to read more nonfiction. I don't need any encouragement to read more nonfiction. I love it with a passion and read a ton of it. But I did make kind of a mental promise to myself for Nonfiction November 2019 that I would try to read nothing else. I would read almost nothing else. It would depend on... I would make a few very isolated categories for exceptions. If I'm being paid to read a work of fiction, then I will do it. Maybe rereads, like for instance our read-alongs. We're doing 2 fiction read-alongs in the month of November. They maybe get away with it. And I'm afraid I have to add another category. Another category that's cropped up, has reared its ugly head. I have been dragooned into proctoring a book group here in Boston, to proctoring a book discussion. When I first heard about it, the participants, all of whom are 1,000,000 years old and as wealthy as God, they're all genuine blue-haired bitty bean Boston Brahmins from Beacon Hill, if that's not too many B's for you. And they said, oh yeah, we have an idea. We're going to read a book, and we're all going to read a book that we decided we're going to pick a book we hated when we had to read it in school. We're going to read it again and see if it's any better. And I said, oh, doesn't that sound fun? And I said, well, you better hope it's fun, Sonny, because you're leading us in the discussion. What are you going to do with the super wealthy? Can't live with them, can't live without them. So I said yes, and I said, what book are we doing? And they said, well, we thought we'd let you decide that. I've built the libraries for most of these ladies, and I have been there. They refer to me as their book guru for half a century, and actually they refer to me as their book guru, and as I've scolded them in the last few years. In the last few years, they've taken to referring to themselves as my base, and I've told them over and over again that is not acceptable, and they just giggle. I swear, they're all like 150 years old, but they act like they're 13. Anyway, I made a short list of candidates of books that they might have all read, at Vassar in the 1920s, and that maybe they all hated, and that we could try again. And I included some nonfiction on that list, hoping that maybe they would all pick something that was nonfiction, so I wouldn't have to read any more fiction than Nonfiction November requires. But no, they all went for fiction. They went for Paradise Lost. They all remember hating it, so we're going to read Paradise Lost. And, the cherry on top here is that not only did they pick this, and not only did they draft me into proctoring them through this, but when I said, okay, all right, fine, we'll meet twice a week until we get through with Paradise Lost, and that's bad enough. That would be bad enough. That would be presumptuous enough. The super wealthy, they think they can run our lives just because they run our lives. But in addition to that, as soon as we agreed, okay, we're all going to read Pride and Paradise Lost. Oh, that sounds terrible. Oh, won't this be fun? I said, yes, okay, well, all right, fine, we'll do that. And then what did I get from all these little blue-haired bitty beans? You have to get us all copies. So the 3 of them whose libraries I built, I said, well, okay, you have copies of Paradise Lost in your libraries because I put them there. And they said, oh, we don't want to use a library book. Those are fancy. Just get us all reading copies. So I will use all the paperbacks that I have here. I have probably 4 here, and then I'll go use book hunting, see if I can find a few more copies. Can you imagine? But anyway, that is part of my Wednesday reads, and that is not nonfiction. All the rest of this is nonfiction. And the first one is not, all of them are things that I have not read yet, except for this first one, which I have read, and I am rereading it, and I am living in it, I am marinating it, and wallowing around in it. I will never get to the bottom of it. It is so good. We've seen it before. It's this, Magic and the Dignity of Man by Brian Copenhaver. Gigantic thing from the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press. It's going to be like $60 when it comes out, and it might be out already, but I don't know how many bookstores it will be generally distributed to. And it's about Pico della Mirandola. But he turns out to be the kernel at the heart of a gigantic intellectual safari all about early Christian mystics and Christian Kabbalah and the Jewish Kabbalah and the Renaissance and all sorts of major figures in the Renaissance, some of whom didn't know Pico all that well, and then a vast amount of the shadow, the intellectual and rhetorical shadow that Pico casts over later generations. So there's a ton of Ruskin in here. I had no idea. I admit, when I saw this was going to be, an 800-page dissertation on an 8-page thing, I thought, well, okay, that's a mighty deep dive into Pico. I'm all for it. I think he's fascinating as a figure, but it turns out this is about much, much more than this. It's about, it tackles not just the author and the so-called oration on the dignity of man, but also its topics in massive detail. I don't know who to recommend this book to, but I want to recommend it to somebody. I don't know who that would be. Maybe Jason Harrigan is interested in Christian mysticism. There's a ton here to interest him about that, that's for sure. But who else? I have no idea. I have no idea at all. But nevertheless, I am having a blast with this book. I'm wallowing in it. There is so much. A lifetime of learning went into this thing. So that is the first of my books, and the only one aside from Paradise Lost that I have already read. And then we have a small pile of things that are nonfiction that I want to show you that are on my immediate launch pad. They're either November books or early December. And the first one is a trial. I am not recommending it to you, even though I haven't read it yet. I am not recommending it to you. The only reason I'm reading it is so that you don't have to. I am reading Trump books. I am reading all the Trump books. And this one stands a good chance of being more irritating than most. This is by Kate Bennett, who is, I believe, a New York Times CNN reporter. Yes, she's a CNN reporter, and this is called Free, Melania. I have no idea what that title means. It is the same mangled Boris and Natasha style of English that Melania Trump speaks herself. So maybe it's worn off on Kate Bennett by osmosis. It certainly isn't literally true. Melania Trump is not free. She is not a free woman at all. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But Kate Bennett is the only reporter who has the official brief of covering the Trump family in an official news capacity. And that had to be approved not just by Melania Trump, but by Donald Trump. And that's bad news. That's very bad news. I don't know anything about Kate Bennett. She writes a newsletter about Washington society and politics. I might like to read that. It's one of my favorite subjects. I don't know anything about her, but one thing I do know is that Donald Trump is completely dishonest. Let's keep this nice and gentle. He's completely dishonest. He tells lies all the time about everything, even when he doesn't have to. And not only that, but like most compulsive liars, he has an infallible instinct for spotting honest people. He hates them, just viscerally hates them on sight. He can tell in 2 seconds if he can warp you. And if he can't warp you, if he in 2 seconds he learns that you are, a probative, honest person, then he wants nothing to do with you. You will not get the job, no matter what the job is, whether it's wife or son or business associate or whatever. You will not get the job if he senses that, because he hates it. And that doesn't speak well of Kate Bennett. That means that either he approved her for the job because he likes her, in which case she's going to lie throughout this book, or he approved her for the job because there isn't going to be a job, because she's not going to be given anything real or substantive to know or to write about. I don't know. If she studied the Trumps for years. If she has, then she has heard all the rumors and she's heard all the substantiated stories that I have about Melania Trump. Is any of that going to be in here? If she has sympathy for Melania Trump, if she likes Melania Trump, then she must hate Donald Trump. Those two things they're absolutely the same coin. He is brutal to her, physically and mentally, every day. He thinks about it. He plans on it. And he has been for years. She must know all that. So what is this going to be? Obviously an apology for Melania Trump. That it will be for sure. This is not a hit job on Melania Trump. So we will hear that she will trot out the same stuff about Melania Trump's fashion sense. I never know what that means. She looks like a Slovak prostitute. Never looks otherwise than a high-end Slovak prostitute. So I don't know what that talk of a fashion sense is, and yet you never hear it otherwise. It comes up every time. Another thing that comes up every time is that she speaks 5 languages. People always say that. She's a blithering idiot. She has the IQ of a barnyard animal. In fact, that would be an insult to most barnyard animals. And yet, the pro-Melania press has always said, well, she speaks 5 languages. A friend of mine in the Washington Press Corps actually quipped at a dinner a quip that made its way back to the White House and was not favorably received. He said, yeah, she speaks 5 languages, all of them poorly. But we shall see. We shall see. It's not a long thing, so I will dive in, and we shall see where the author stands. Does she note any of Melania's many, many faults? Her persistence, her stupid persistence in not becoming fluent in any of her languages. Why does she speak English so embarrassingly when she has been speaking this language for 30 years? Why is she so embarrassing when she opens her mouth? Why is she so bad at her job? First ladies have a very limited portfolio. They're given obvious, easy Macy's window type things and causes to do. Melania Trump has done nothing but foul up the 2 that she's been given, including branding one with a moniker that again is her Boris and Natasha horrible pigeon speak English. Be best is crappy English. So, we shall see. Is it a whitewash of her? Is it truthful but sympathetic of her and a whitewash of Donald Trump? Is it perhaps negative to Donald Trump? I can't imagine that would happen. If that happens, then someone will read him the negative bits of this book and she'll lose her job. One way or another, your faithful Johnny on the Spot will read it and let you know. Then this next one is an October book, but it didn't get to me in October, so I'm going to dive right into it. This is by Blaine Brown, and it is Mighty Endeavor, The American Nation and World War II. It's a slim World War II volume, naked hardcover, that it once again uses Mighty Endeavor as a title. World War II books tend to do that. World War II authors tend not to realize that it's been done before. But the interesting thing about it's a broader narrative that sort of dunks down on the major seismic points of World War II. Appeasement, Pearl Harbor, D-Day, that sort of thing. The thing that interests me about it is that those discussions are interlarded with biographical sketches, dozens of them, detailed biographical sketches of lots of people who were pivotal in World War II or on whom World War II had a pivotal impact. And that's kind of interesting. That's kind of an interesting approach, that history through biography. So I'll give it a try and see. So I imagine that some of those biographical sketches will interest me more than the rest of the book. But we shall see. And then this next one is the December book. This is a finished copy. I think we might have seen the advanced copy here on this channel. This is Buddy Levy's book, Labyrinth of Ice, about the Greely expedition at the end of the 19th century. The Greely expedition, just a couple of dozen explorers and scientists wanted to go to the farthest north. They wanted to go as far north as anyone had ever gone to sort of reclaim that distinction for America. Because all the exploring records have been British for forever and ever. And they met with disaster. One disaster after another. A popular thing, I haven't read this. I've had the advanced copy of this, and I haven't got to it. But it's a December history book, and what if it's really good? It might have a place on my epic year-end list. So I got to get to it. I got to get to it right away. One of the things that people tend to say about the Greely exhibit, the expedition, they tend to talk about the lack of food and the disastrous supply mishaps that left these people stranded. And also the horrible weather, ferocious sub-zero weather, and vicious wolves. Vicious wolves are brought up all the time. I'm sure that this will... Well, let's see. In July of 1881, Lieutenant A.W. Greely and his crew of 24 scientists and explorers were bound for the last region unmarked on the global maps, their goal the farthest north. Greely and his men confronted every possible challenge. Vicious wolves. Vicious wolves, sub-zero temperatures, and months of total darkness, as they set about one of the most remote, unrelenting environments on the planet. In May of 1882, they reached their target, the northernmost point ever attained, and returned to camp to eagerly await the resupply ship, and that would return at the end of the year. Only nothing came. And that's all true except for the first part. The wolves were only vicious because the Greely expedition shot at them. You would be too. If men shot at you, you would become vicious towards them. Otherwise, the wolves would have kept their distance and just watched. Maybe picked off dead bodies, scavenged dead bodies, but not attacked men on board icebound vessels. That only happens when you make an enemy of a pack of wolves. But I can overlook that. I can overlook that little detail. So I'll be diving right into this. And then the last thing. I heard that doorbell. So that might be more mail. We shall see. The last thing I couldn't pass up. This is an underground guide to sewers, or down, through, and out in Paris, London, New York, etc. This is a big illustrated guide to the history of sewers in a lot of the world's major metropolises. It starts out with a historical essay about waste management in ancient Rome. And I haven't read this book, I haven't dipped into it at all, but I couldn't resist it, of course. And that opening essay will tell me a lot about what I can expect from this author, because I know an unhealthy amount about the sewer systems of ancient Rome. An unhealthy amount about them. So I'll be able to tell from that chapter, what the author does with a précis, what the author does with an overview of a subject that's not. The author is Stephen Halliday, and I have a feeling that his real area of specialty is 19th century sewer systems. That's what most of the pictures in the book are. So I won't hold the first chapter against him if it's full of errors, but I think I'm still gonna enjoy this because it's a subject that we don't like to think about. I have been in Boston's sewer system. I've had extremely detailed guided tours of Boston's sewer systems and been told a lot about how New York sewer systems work. So this will be fascinating in a grotesque kind of way. And so we have an underground guide to sewers. We have Labyrinth of Ice, the Greeley Expedition. We have Mighty Endeavor, World War II told largely through biographies. We have Free Melania, a new profile / biography of America's current First Lady. We have Magic and the Dignity of Man, a gigantic thing. I don't know who to recommend it to. Boy, is it good, though. Oh, boy, is it good. It is going in this room. Absolutely. And there are only a tiny handful of 2019 books I can say that about. It is coming in this room. And last but not least, Paradise Lost. As a sort of command performance. Because if the people who not only live on Beacon Hill but own Beacon Hill require it, well, then what are you going to do? Say no? So that's it for now. That is my Wednesday reads, but I'm going to check and see if that was maybe more mail. So I might be back. Thank you, BookTube.